Rain hammered the cracked pavement like 1,000 tiny fists. Mark stood on the porch, water pouring down his face, watching his entire life spill out of a black duffel bag onto the wet concrete. "You're nothing without me," Sarah screamed, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You hear me? Nothing." The door slammed so hard the porch light flickered. Click, click, click. 3 locks, each one a nail in a coffin. Mark looked down at his hands, empty except for his car keys. Dangling from the keychain was a small brass key, dull, worn smooth from years of anxious rubbing. Under the porch light, it caught a tiny glimmer of gold. He whispered to Rain, to the night, to no one, "Just a little longer." Then he walked into the darkness, leaving everything behind. What Sarah didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that in exactly 43 minutes, $400 million would hit an account with Mark's name on it. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Hit that like button if you believe timing is everything. Drop a comment telling me if you've ever been doubted by someone close to you, and subscribe because stories like this don't come around every day. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Now, let me take you back to where it all started falling apart. 5 months earlier, the kitchen table was old oak, scratched from a dozen moves across 3 states. Mark sat there at 2 in the morning, laptop screen painting his face blue in the darkness. His fingers moved automatically to his pocket. The brass key. He pulled it out, rolling it between his thumb and finger, a nervous habit he developed over 5 long years. Subject: Settlement conference, confidential. His lawyer's email was 3 paragraphs of legal language that basically said, "We're close. Real close." The company was finally buckling. The evidence Mark had collected, documents proving they'd knowingly poisoned a water supply affecting 6,000 families, was airtight. They couldn't wiggle out anymore. "Just a little longer," Mark muttered, clicking the key against the table. Tap, tap, tap. "You're talking to yourself again." Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing the old college t-shirt she slept in. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her eyes were tired, not sleepy tired. So tired. "Sorry," Mark said, closing the laptop. "Didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." She moved to the fridge, grabbed the orange juice container, drank straight from it. A year ago, he would have teased her about that. Now he said nothing. "Let me guess. The settlement is almost here." "Sarah, I know it's been 5 years, Mark." She set the container down hard. "You've been saying just a little longer for 5 years. Meanwhile, I'm working doubles at the hospital. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage, and you're sitting here at 2 a.m. playing whistleblower hero." "It's not playing. People got sick. Kids got sick. Someone had to. Someone did. You did. And you lost your job for it. You burned every bridge in the industry. And for what?" She gestured at the cramped kitchen, the water stain on the ceiling they couldn't afford to fix. "For this?" Mark's jaw tightened. He fingered the brass key harder. "The settlement is real. My lawyer says." "Your lawyer has been saying that for 3 years. Sarah's voice cracked. "I'm tired, Mark. I'm so tired." For a moment, just one small moment, her mask slipped. Her eyes got wet. She looked like the girl he'd married 7 years ago, the one who believed in him when he'd first found those documents, who'd said, "Do the right thing, even knowing what it would cost." But then her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it. Her face changed. Harder, colder. "I have an early shift," she said, heading back to the bedroom. "Lock up when you're done with whatever." Mark watched her go. On her phone screen, before it went dark, he'd seen a name. David, Harbor Street Cafe, 10 a.m. tomorrow. David, her co-worker, the physical therapist with a nice car, and the condo downtown and an easy smile. Mark turned the brass key over and over in his palm. It opened a safe deposit box at First National Bank. Box 447. Inside was every original document, every piece of correspondence, every bit of proof that this nightmare lawsuit was real. "Just a little longer," he whispered to the empty kitchen. 3 months later. Sarah didn't mean for it to happen. That's what she told herself anyway, sitting in David's car outside the hospital after a shift. They'd grab coffee. Then coffee became lunch. Then lunch became these moments. Sitting in his warm car, talking about anything except medical charts and overdue bills. You deserve better, David said. Not for the first time. It's complicated. Sarah stared at her wedding ring. Simple silver band. They couldn't afford anything fancy back then. Is it though? David's voice was gentle, not pushy. That's what made it dangerous. I see you breaking yourself in half every day, working yourself to the bone while he sits home chasing a ghost. He's not chasing a ghost. The lawsuit is real. Maybe, but how long do you wait? How much of yourself do you sacrifice? Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. That night, she came home to find Mark asleep at the table, head on his laptop, the brass key still clutched in his hand. She felt something twist in her chest. Love? Pity? Resentment? All three mixed into something that tasted like poison. She didn't wake him, just turned off the light and went to bed alone. 1 month later, the envelope was read. Final notice stamped across it in angry letters. Sarah held it in shaking hands, standing in the hallway while Mark was out at another meeting with his lawyer. Another meeting. Another promise. Another we're so close. The electric company was going to shut them off in 7 days. She walked through the house. Their house. The one they bought together in better times. 3 bedrooms they planned to fill with kids. A backyard with a garden. Sarah never had time to plan anymore. A life that was supposed to be different. In the bedroom, she found his laptop open. Email pulled up. Subject: Final approval settlement conference scheduled. Her heart jumped. She read it quickly. His lawyer saying the settlement was moving to final approval. Could be days now. Maybe a week. Sarah stared at that email for a long time. Then she looked at the red envelope in her other hand. Could be days. Maybe a week. 5 years it could be, and maybe echoed in her head. She made a decision. Mark pulled up to the house at 7:30 p.m. The meeting with his lawyer had gone well. Really well. They were in final approval. The company had agreed to terms. Just waiting on the judge's signature now. Could be tonight, his lawyer had said. Could be tomorrow morning. But it's happening, Mark. It's finally happening. Mark had driven home with his windows down, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. That feeling died when he saw the boxes on the porch. His clothes, his books, his laptop, his entire life packed into cardboard boxes and black trash bags, sitting in the gathering dusk like tombstones. Sarah? He tried his key in the door. It didn't fit. The locks had been changed. Sarah? He pounded on the door. Sarah, open up. What's going on? The door jerked open. Sarah stood there, eyes red but voice steady. Behind her, Mark could see empty spaces where his things used to be. I'm done, she said. Simple as that. Like she was commenting on the weather. Done? What do you mean done? Sarah, the settlement. It's happening. My lawyer called today. We're in final approval. You don't get it, do you? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I don't care about your settlement anymore. I don't care about any of it. Sarah, please. Just 1 more week. That's all I'm asking. 1 more. 1 more week. Her voice cracked like thunder. You've been asking for 1 more week for 5 years. I gave you everything, Mark. Everything. And what do I have to show for it? Debt. Exhaustion. A marriage that's been dead for 2 years. It hasn't been dead. We can fix this. Once the money comes through. There is no money, she screamed. There's just your fantasy. Your stupid fantasy in this. She grabbed his wrist, yanked his hand up. The brass key dangled from the keychain. Your key to nowhere. Your magic key that's going to solve everything. Mark pulled his hand back, closing his fist around the key protectively. It's real, he said quietly. I know you don't believe me anymore, but it's real. Take your fantasy key and go. Sarah's voice went flat. Dead. Take your boxes. Take your car. Just go. Sarah. Go. Mark stood there in the doorway. Rain starting to fall. Behind Sarah. He could see into their living room, see the life they'd built, see 7 years dissolving like sugar in water. He wanted to fight, wanted to force her to listen, wanted to make her understand. But he was so tired. Can I at least get my charger? His phone was at 15%. My phone's dying. I packed everything. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Checked the boxes. Mark nodded slowly. He loaded the boxes into his beat-up Honda, rain soaking through his shirt. Sarah watched from the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. When he'd finished, he stood at the bottom of the porch steps, looking up at her one last time. "I love you," he said. Sarah's face crumpled for just a second, just 1 second. Then it went hard again. "I used to love you too," she whispered, "before you became this." She went inside. Click, click, click. 3 locks. Mark stood in the rain, water pouring down his face, mixing with something else. Something saltier. He looked down at his keychain. The brass key caught the porch light one last time before the light clicked off, triggered by some timer Sarah must have set. "Just a little longer," Mark whispered to the darkness. Then he got in his car and drove away from everything he'd ever known. The car smelled like old coffee and defeat. Mark sat in the parking lot of a closed grocery store, rain hammering his windshield like it was trying to break through. His phone glowed at 3% battery. No charger. He dug through every box. Sarah must have forgotten to pack it. Or maybe she'd thrown it away. His hands shook as he scrolled through his contacts. Richard Brennan, investor. Mark stared at that name. Richard was a bottom feeder. One of those guys who bought up lawsuit claims from desperate people for pennies on the dollar. He'd approached Mark 6 months ago at a coffee shop, somehow knowing about the case. 50,000 cash, Richard had said, sliding a business card across the table. Today, no more waiting, no more risk. Mark had walked away without taking the card, but he'd save a number, just in case. Now, sitting in his car with nowhere to go and 3% battery, that 50,000 sounded like salvation, an apartment, first and last month's rent, money to buy food that wasn't ramen, money to prove to Sarah that he could take care of things. His thumb hovered over the call button. 1 tap. That's all it would take. He'd been so sure the settlement would come through. So absolutely certain. But what if his lawyer was wrong? What if the judge delayed again? What if this dragged on another year? Could he sleep in his car for a year? Just a little longer, he whispered, but the words felt hollow now. Empty, like they'd been scraped clean of meaning. His phone buzzed. 2% battery. Mark's thumb moved closer to the call button, then stopped. He pulled the keychain out of his pocket. The brass key sat there, small and worn, barely catching any light in the darkness. This key opened box 447. Inside that box was every original document, the chain of evidence, the proof that 6,000 people had been poisoned, that kids had gotten sick, that a company had known and hidden it. If he sold his claim to Richard, Richard would make him sign everything over, including the contents of that box. And Richard would settle fast, take whatever quick payout he could get, maybe 20 million, maybe 50 million. But the 6,000 families, they'd get nothing. The company would seal the records, bury the evidence, keep poisoning people. Mark stared at that key for a long time. Just a little longer, he said one more time. Then he powered his phone off completely, saving that last 2% of battery. He climbed into the back seat, pulled his jacket over himself, and closed his eyes. The rain kept falling. Sarah stood in the empty kitchen, glass of wine in hand. The house was so quiet, unnaturally quiet. For 5 years, even when they weren't talking, Mark's presence had filled the space. The tap of his laptop keys at night, his muttering, the jangle of those keys, always with that brass key he treated like it was made of gold. She'd done the right thing. She knew she'd done the right thing. So why did her chest feel like someone had scooped out her insides? Her phone buzzed. "David, you okay? Want to talk?" Sarah stared at the message. Sweet David. Stable David. David who had a 401k and took vacations and wasn't chasing windmills. She typed back, "I'm fine. Talk tomorrow." But she wasn't fine. She walked through the house, wine glass in hand, and ended up in the hallway. On the wall was a hook where Mark used to hang his keys when he came home. It was empty now, just 2 screw holes in the drywall. Sarah touched the empty space. She remembered the email she'd seen on his laptop, the one from his lawyer. Final approval. Could be days now, maybe a week. What if... She whispered to the empty house. Then she shook her head hard. No, she'd been down that road 1,000 times. What if had kept her trapped for 5 years? What if had drained her bank account, her energy, her hope? She'd made her choice. Sarah finished her wine, turned off the lights, and went to bed. But she didn't sleep. She just stared at the ceiling, wondering why victory felt so much like loss. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered, what if he was right this time? She told that voice to shut up. The rain continued through the night. In a parking lot across town, Mark slept fitfully in the back seat of his Honda, the brass key clutched in his fist even in sleep. Neither he nor Sarah knew that in exactly 43 minutes, at 3:47 a.m., a federal judge would sign the final settlement approval. Neither of them knew that by sunrise, $400 million would be transferred to the account linked to safe deposit box 447. Neither of them knew that the timing of that deposit, 43 minutes after Sarah locked Mark out, would change absolutely everything. Because in law, timing isn't just important, it's everything. The morning after 6:47 a.m., Mark woke to sunlight stabbing through his car windows and his entire body screaming in pain. Sleeping in a back seat will do that to you. His neck was twisted wrong. His legs had gone numb somewhere around 4 a.m. His mouth tasted like old pennies. He sat up slowly, groaning. Outside, the parking lot was coming alive. Early morning joggers, a bakery truck making deliveries, normal people doing normal things. Mark felt like an alien watching from another planet. His phone. He needed to charge his phone. He dug through the boxes in his trunk until he found an old adapter. The grocery store was open now. He could go inside, buy a cheap charger, plug his phone in his car. But that required money. Mark checked his wallet. $32. That was it. Everything else was in their joint account, the one Sarah controlled. He sat there for a moment, staring at those bills. $32 between him and absolute zero. Then he drove to a gas station, bought the cheapest charger they had for $18, and sat in the parking lot while his phone slowly came back to life. 1%, 2%, 3%. The phone buzzed. Notifications started flooding in. 14 missed calls. David Chun, lawyer. 23 text messages. 47 emails. Mark's heart started hammering. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. He called David back with shaking fingers. Mark, Jesus Christ, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you all night. Sarah kicked me out. My phone died. What's wrong? Did something happen with the settlement? There was a pause. A long pause. Mark, David said slowly, the settlement didn't just happen. It went through at 3:47 this morning. Full approval for $100 million. It's done. It's over. You won. The world tilted sideways. What? Mark's voice came out as a whisper. $400 million. Wired to the account linked to box 447 at 0347 this morning. Mark, you're rich. You're insanely, impossibly rich. Mark looked at his dashboard clock. 6:52 a.m. What time did you say? 3:47 a.m. Why? Mark's mind raced. Sarah had locked him out at 7:30 last night. He'd left at 7:45, maybe 7:50. The money hit the account at 3:47 in the morning. David, Mark said carefully, what does that timing mean? For the divorce? David was quiet for a beat. Then, when exactly did Sarah lock you out? 7:30, maybe 7:40 p.m. And you left the property when? 7:50. I have the timestamp on my call to a friend. I called him from the parking lot. David let out a low whistle. Mark, do you understand what this means? In this state, assets acquired after separation are considered separate property. The money hit the account 8 hours after you were legally separated from the household. That money? It's yours. All yours. She has no claim to it. Mark sat there, phone pressed his ear, watching a mom load groceries into her minivan across the parking lot. $400 million. All his. Because Sarah had locked him out 43 minutes too early. Mark? You still there? Yeah. Mark said, I'm here. Come my office. We need to discuss next steps. Asset protection. Tax implications. And Mark? Don't call Sarah. Don't text her. Don't communicate at all until we figure this out. Mark hung up, sat there, stared at that brass key dangling from his keychain. Then he started laughing. Not happy laughter. Not triumphant laughter. The kind of laughter that comes when the universe reveals just how cruel its sense of humor really is. Sarah woke up with a headache and a mouth full of cotton. The wine. She'd finished the whole bottle after Mark left. Stupid. She dragged herself to the shower, let hot water pound her skull while she tried not to think about anything. Not the empty house. Not the look on Mark's face when she told him to go. Not the question that had kept her up half the night. What if he was right? Her phone buzzed while she was getting dressed. David. Coffee before your shift? I'm worried about you. Sarah looked at that message for a long time. Sweet David, who wanted to take care of her, who had a stable job and a normal life, and didn't spend 5 years chasing ghosts. She should feel something, right? Relief? Freedom? Something? Instead, she just felt empty. She texted back, can't today, maybe tomorrow. Then she got in her car and drove to the hospital for another 12-hour shift. At the nurse's station, her co-worker Jenny grabbed her arm. Girl, you look terrible. Rough night. Something like that. Man trouble? Sarah laughed bitterly. Is there any other kind? What happened? I finally did it. Kicked him out. Changed the locks. I'm done. Jenny squeezed her hand. Good for you. You've been carrying him for way too long. Yeah, Sarah said. Good for me? But it didn't feel good. It felt like she'd amputated a part of herself and couldn't stop checking to see if it was really gone. Her shift was a blur. She moved through on autopilot, checking vitals, administering meds, smiling at patients while her mind was somewhere else. Around 2 p.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Sarah, this is David Chun, Mark's attorney. We need to schedule a meeting to discuss the divorce proceedings. Please call my office at your earliest convenience. Sarah stared at that message. Already? Mark was already getting lawyers involved? Fine. Let him. She'd get her own lawyer. They'd split the house equity, what little there was, and she'd be done. Finally, completely done. She didn't call back. She'd deal with it after her shift. 3 months later. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and broken dreams. Sarah sat next to her lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia, who come highly recommended and charged $300 an hour. Money Sarah didn't really have, but she'd borrowed from her parents. Across the aisle, Mark sat with David Chun. Sarah hadn't seen Mark since the night she'd thrown him out. He looked different. He'd gotten a haircut, new clothes. He looked rested, healthy even. It made her irrationally angry. All rise. Judge Morrison entered, an older black woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen every kind of human mess. She settled behind the bench, adjusted her glasses, and looked at both parties. This is a dissolution of marriage hearing for Bradley versus Bradley. Let's keep this civil, people. I've got 6 more of these today. She shuffled papers. Mrs. Bradley, you're seeking equitable division of marital assets. Is that correct? Patricia stood. Yes, Your Honor. My client contributed significantly to the household during the marriage and is entitled to half of all marital assets, including any settlement money Mr. Bradley received from his lawsuit. Sarah felt a small surge of satisfaction. See? Even her lawyer knew about the settlement. Mark must have finally gotten something. Maybe not the $400 million he dreamed about, but something, and she was entitled to half. Judge Morrison looked at Mark's side. Mr. Chun? David stood. Your Honor, my client does not dispute the division of actual marital assets. However, The settlement in question, totaling $400 million, was not a marital asset. The courtroom went dead silent. Sarah's brain stuttered. 400, what? Patricia recovered first. Your Honor, that's absurd. The lawsuit was filed during the marriage. Any proceeds are clearly marital property. Normally, yes, David said calmly. However, in this case, the settlement was deposited at 0347 on November 15th. Mrs. Bradley locked Mr. Bradley out of the marital home and changed the locks at 1930 on November 14th. Mr. Bradley left the property at approximately 1950. We have time-stamped phone records confirming his location away from the property at that time. He handed a folder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. The money was deposited 8 hours after my client was forcibly separated from the household. Under state law, assets acquired after separation are separate property. Mrs. Bradley has no legal claim to these funds. Sarah couldn't breathe. $400 million? $400 million? Your Honor, Patricia jumped in. This is clearly a technical loophole. The spirit of the law. The spirit of the law is what I say it is. Judge Morrison cut her off. She was reading through the documents. These timestamps are correct? Yes, Your Honor. We have phone records, text messages, and a police report Mrs. Bradley filed the next day confirming Mr. Bradley was no longer residing at the property as of the 14th. A police report. Sarah remembered now. She called the non-emergency line the next day to document the separation, in case Mark tried to come back, just to cover herself legally. That call was going to cost her $200 million. Judge Morrison looked up. Mrs. Bradley, did you or did you not change the locks and remove Mr. Bradley from a marital residence on November 14th? Sarah stood on shaking legs. Yes, but I didn't know. What you knew or didn't know is irrelevant. The law is clear. The judge looked at both lawyers. The settlement funds deposited after the separation are separate property. Mrs. Bradley has no claim to them. However, actual marital assets acquired during the marriage will be divided equitably. Patricia tried again. Your Honor, surely. Counselor, I've made my ruling. Judge Morrison's voice had steel in it. Mr. Bradley is entitled to keep the settlement funds. Now, let's discuss the actual marital assets. The rest of the hearing was a blur. The house, underwater on the mortgage, worth maybe $20,000 in equity after debts. They'd split it. Their cars, his beat-up Honda, her slightly less beat-up Toyota. That was it. 7 years of marriage came down to $10,000 each and a car. Except Mark was walking away with $400 million. When the judge dismissed them, Sarah sat frozen in her chair. $400 million. 43 minutes. That's what came down to. If she'd waited until morning. If she'd kicked him out at 8:30 instead of 7:30. If she'd just... Sarah? Patricia touched her shoulder gently. I'm sorry. The timing. There's nothing we can do. The law is clear. Sarah couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Across the aisle, Mark was packing up his briefcase. He glanced over at her once. Their eyes met. Sarah expected to see triumph. Revenge. That look of, I told you so. Instead, she saw something worse. Sadness. Mark looked away and walked out of the courtroom. Sarah made it to her car before the shaking started. $400 million. $400 million. $400 million. The words kept echoing in her head like a nightmare loop. She'd been 43 minutes away from being set for life, from never worrying about money again, from proving that her 5 years of struggle had meant something. 43 minutes. Her phone rang. David. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Her mother. Voicemail. Again. Jenny from work. Sarah turned the phone off. She sat in the courthouse parking lot for 2 hours, watching people come and go. Lawyers in expensive suits. Couples with shell-shocked faces. Security guards on smoke breaks. Normal people living normal lives while her world imploded in slow motion. When she finally drove home, the house felt like a tomb. Everything Mark had left behind was gone. She donated it all the week after she kicked him out. every trace of him erased. Except she couldn't erase him from her head. The settlement is real. I know you don't believe me anymore, but it's real. He'd tried to tell her. That last night on the porch, soaking wet, he'd tried one more time. And she'd laughed at him. Sarah poured herself wine, then poured it down the sink. She needed to think clearly. David called again. This time she answered. Sarah, honey, I heard. I'm so sorry. Do you want to come over? No, Sarah said. I need be alone. Are you sure? You shouldn't be by yourself right now. David, I need you to be honest with me. Did you know about the settlement? Silence. David, there were rumors at the hospital. One of the physical therapists has a friend who works at the courthouse. They said Mark's case was getting close. But I didn't think. Nobody thought it would actually be that much. But you knew it might be real. And you never said anything. Sarah, you were so done. So exhausted. I didn't want to give you false hope. False hope. Right. I have to go, Sarah said. Wait, Sarah. She hung up. Then she sat in her kitchen. The same kitchen where Mark used to sit at 2 a.m., fingering that stupid brass key, and let herself cry for the first time since the hearing. Not for the money, for the 43 minutes. For the fact that if she just trusted him one more night, everything would be different. 6 months later, the house was modest. That surprised everyone. When you have $400 million, people expect you to buy a mansion, a compound, something ostentatious. Mark bought a 3-bedroom Craftsman in a quiet neighborhood. Nice, but not flashy. Big enough for him. Small enough to still feel like home. He stood in his office, the 3rd bedroom he converted, staring at something mounted on the wall. A shadow box frame. Inside, on black velvet, sat a small brass key. Worn, dull, scratched from 5 years of nervous handling. He'd finally emptied box 447 at First National Bank. The documents were now with his lawyer, being used to set up a compensation fund for the 6,000 families affected by the contaminated water. $100 million set aside for them. Medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering. The company had tried to seal the records. Mark had refused. The evidence was now public. The EPA was investigating. Criminal charges were being filed. It had been the right thing to do, but it didn't feel like victory. Mark touched the frame gently. A plaque beneath the key read, "Just a little longer." His phone buzzed. His lawyer. "Mark, we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" Sarah's lawyer filed a motion to revisit the asset division. They're claiming emotional distress and arguing that the timing was a technicality that doesn't reflect the intent of the law. Mark closed his eyes. Will it work? No. The judge was clear. But it'll drag things out. More hearings. More lawyers. More mess. Tell them I want to meet with Sarah. Just her and me. No lawyers. Mark, I don't think that's... Just set it up, please. 3 days later, Sarah's lawyer called back. Sarah had agreed. They met at a coffee shop halfway between their old neighborhood and Mark's new one. Neutral territory. Sarah got there first. Mark saw her through the window, sitting at a corner table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. She looked tired. No, not tired. Haunted. Mark almost turned around and left, but he'd asked for this. So he went inside. Sarah looked up when he approached. Her face went through several expressions, anger, pain, something that might have been regret, before settling on careful blankness. "Hi," Mark said. "Hi." He sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Your lawyer said you want to meet," Sarah finally said. "Why?" Mark chose his words carefully. "Because I don't want this to drag out in court. Because we were married for 7 years, and that should mean something. And because I need to know, do you regret it?" "Regret what? Kicking you out? Taking the settlement? Which specific thing do you want me to regret, Mark?" "I'm not trying to hurt you." "Well, you're doing a fantastic job anyway." Her voice cracked. $400 million, Mark. $400 million. And I was 43 minutes away from half of it. Is that all you care about? The money? Sarah's eyes flashed. "Don't you dare." Don't you dare make me the villain here. I supported you for 5 years. 5 years. I worked myself to death while you chased your lawsuit. I believed in you until I had nothing left to believe with. So yeah, the money hurts. The timing hurts. All of it hurts. Mark nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. That stopped her. What? You're right. I asked too much. I expected you to keep believing when I gave you no reason to. I watched you break yourself in half, and I kept saying, just a little longer. Like that was enough. It wasn't enough. You deserve better. Sarah stared at him. Then why did you fight me in court? Why not just share it? Because I legally couldn't, Mark said. The money wasn't mine yet when we separated. And when it became mine, we were already done. The law is clear about that. I didn't fight you, Sarah. The law did. But you could have given me something anyway. Out of the goodness of your heart. You chose not to. Mark was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I could have. But I needed to know something first. Know what? If you regretted throwing me out because you loved me, or because you found out I was rich. The coffee shop felt very quiet suddenly. Sarah's face went pale, then red. That's not fair. Isn't it? You threw me out when you thought I was worthless. You changed your mind when you found out I wasn't. What am I supposed to think? I threw you out because I was drowning. Sarah's voice rose. Other customers glanced over. She lowered it. I was drowning, Mark. Every day. I woke up and I was drowning a little more. And you just kept saying, trust me, while I went under. What was I supposed to do? Trust me, Mark said simply. One more day. That's all it would have taken. Sarah laughed bitterly. Easy to say now. No, it's not easy. None of this is easy. Mark pulled something from his pocket. An envelope. Your lawyer wants to fight this in court. Wants to argue the timing was a technicality. She'll lose, but it'll take years and cost both of us a lot of money and peace of mind. He slid the envelope across the table. What is this? Open it. Sarah did. Inside was a check. Made out to her. For $10 million. She stared at it. What? I don't understand. It's not a settlement. It's not alimony. It's me acknowledging that you sacrificed a lot for those 5 years. That you believed in me when I had nothing. This isn't about the timing or the law. It's about doing what's right. Sarah couldn't stop staring at the check. $10 million. More money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes as a nurse. There's one condition, Mark said. She looked up. What? You dropped the court case. We end this now. And you never contact me again. Something in Sarah's chest cracked. Never. We're done, Sarah. We've been done for a long time. Maybe since before you kicked me out. Maybe before I even started the lawsuit. I don't know. But this, he gestured between them. This is over. Take the money. Start a new life. But we're done. Sarah's hand shook. She put the check down on the table. What if I don't want the money? Then we'll see each other in court for the next 3 years while your lawyer loses. Either way, we're done. Sarah picked up the check again. Looked at those numbers. $10 million. It should feel like winning. It felt like losing everything. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. That key. The brass one. Did you really believe? All those years. Did you really believe it would pay off? Mark thought about that. Some days, yeah. Some days I was absolutely sure. Other days, he shook his head. Other days I thought I was crazy. But I'd made a promise to those families. 6,000 people who'd been hurt. I couldn't walk away. Not even when walking away would have saved us. So you chose them over me. No, I chose what was right. And that cost us everything. Mark stood up. Goodbye, Sarah. He walked toward the door. Mark. He turned. Sarah held up the check. Thank you. He nodded once. Then he left. Sarah sat there for a long time, staring at the check in her hand. $10 million. It should feel like redemption. Instead, it felt like the consolation prize. Back in the old house, sold now, occupied by a young couple with a baby. There was still a hook in the hallway, 2 screw holes in the drywall. where Mark used to hang his keys. The new owners had hung a little sign there. Home is where the heart is. They didn't know the story of that hook. Didn't know about the brass key, about the 43 minutes, about the $400 million. They just knew it was a good spot for their keys. Sometimes the past leaves marks that the present doesn't understand. Sometimes timing is everything. And sometimes, just sometimes, the key to nowhere turns out to be the key to everything. You just have to believe a little longer. So here's what I want you to remember from this story. Life isn't fair. Timing isn't fair. Sarah worked hard for 5 years and got 10 million. Mark suffered for 5 years and got 400 million. Neither of them got what they really wanted, each other. But here's the thing. Mark held on. When every logical person would have quit. When his own wife stopped believing. When he was down to his last $32 and sleeping in his car. He held on. Not because he knew it would work out, but because it was the right thing to do. That's the difference between people who make it and people who quit 43 minutes too early. It's not about the money. It's not about being right. It's about believing in something, really believing, even when nobody else can see it, even when you can barely see it yourself. So whatever your brass key is, whatever dream or goal or mission you're chasing while everyone around you thinks you're crazy, just remember Mark in that car, phone at 2%, finger hovering over the call button. Remember him choosing to wait just a little longer. And ask yourself, am I willing to wait too? Or am I going to quit 43 minutes too early? If this story hit you hard, smash that like button. Drop a comment telling me. Would you have waited one more day like Mark, or would you have walked away like Sarah? And subscribe, because stories like this, stories that make you think, make you feel, make you question everything. That's what we do here. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the key to nowhere is really the key to everything. You just have to hold on a little longer.